Thank you to Maeve, Mr. Torres, Destiny Munchkin, and everyone else for subscribing to the channel. Curley is the captain of the Tolpar ship. He has been with the Pony Express for quite some time and has managed to climb the corporate ladder to get where he currently is at this point in the story. He's one of the two protagonists in the game, and we only play as him before the crash, for reasons we'll discuss later on. 7 days before the crash. Curly is having his psych evaluation with Anya. She notes that he gave the same answers as last time, wishing he'd open up more. Anya hints that she's uncomfortable doing Jimmy's evaluation, mentioning a bizarre comment he made. Curly offers to do it for her, which relieves Anya. She gives him a note from Swansea and goes down to see him in utility, where Daisuke the intern has gotten himself stuck in some emergency foam. Being the captain, Curly is the only one with authority to get the axe to free Daisuke. Curly tells Swansea that he should be more careful as the foam could have damaged one of the cryopods. He gives him the axe to clean up the foam. After this, Curly is asked by Jimmy if he's had his psych evaluation. Curly confirms and makes a joke about Jimmy's comment to Anya. They go to the cockpit, but on the way, Curly goes through an out-of-reality sequence where he ends up walking off the edge after going up an extended staircase. He lands in an ocean of blood with the night sky above him. As he walks through, ladders begin to drop around him and the emergency warning signs flash around him. He walks towards a giant light as it overtakes the screen, and Curly ends up outside the cockpit door. Jimmy is sitting in the left-hand seat. Curly does Jimmy's evaluation off-screen, where we only see the end of it. Off-record, Curly reflects on his career, wondering if he should stay put with his position because of the status he's built, or if he should abandon it all and try something new. He understands he's in a great position, but questions if this is all he'll ever do, and if it's worth taking a risk, even if it means starting at the bottom all over again. Jimmy seems to understand, saying Curly must feel that he's finally reached the top of the ladder, but now wonders if he's on the wrong ladder altogether. We can see that Curly is a respectful and kind man. He's a good captain that lives up to the reputation and remains professional with the crew. For example, when Daisuke gets stuck in the foam, he tells Swansea to be more careful in an assertive way, rather than yelling at him or telling off Daisuke. Daisuke is under Swansea's tutelage, so he's responsible for what he does. If he doesn't take care of him properly, then he could put the whole crew in danger. He also helped Anya when she expressed her discomfort on doing Jimmy's evaluation. He took that responsibility away from her to make her feel comfortable. However, there's a big flaw that Curly has that will come into play later. When Curly tells Jimmy about the comment he made to Anya, despite knowing that it made her uncomfortable, he doesn't mention this, but instead makes a joke about it and then moves on. Another flaw of Curly's is being unable to express his true feelings to Anya. At first this doesn't seem as bad, as he may have thought that showing vulnerability to the crew would worry them about his ability to man the crew properly. Instead, he talks to Jimmy about his feelings, as he is more comfortable talking to his friend. I'm sure everyone feels that way, where they can only confide in someone that they can trust. But when you're working and responsible for people, it would be better to talk to a medical professional who can give good advice, and, as we will see later, Jimmy isn't the friend you want to confide in. 6 days before the crash. Curly enters the main room and discovers that the crew have thrown him a surprise birthday party. They're only allowed one communal event per trip as company policy. Even though the party's for Curly, he still has to make his own birthday cake. After doing so, Curly reveals to everyone that they're being laid off by the company after this trip. He admits he was supposed to tell them nearer the end of transit, thought they deserved to know now. Each member of the crew have their own reaction, but Jimmy's is the most important here, as he takes his frustrations out on Curly, revealing what Curly previously told him in private. He says Curly must feel better now that he can abandon his position without feeling guilty. He mentions his struggle of life, and how Curly described it. Now Curly can head for something bigger and better. Curly tries to defend himself, saying that he doesn't want to feel he has to escape his own life, but Jimmy slams the table, cutting him off. He says the only thing he's trying to escape is the crew, how they're dirt beneath his shoe, and he can leave without ruining his reputation. With a low mood, Curly cuts the cake. Despite being told by the company to tell the crew near the end of the trip, Curly shows enough respect for them and their futures to tell them as soon as possible. I imagine so that they would have time to figure things out before they return to Earth. Even though he was genuinely thinking of the crew, Jimmy throws Curly's respect back in his face by revealing his private feelings to the entire crew. He's jealous that Curly will likely be okay when they get back, whereas he will only have his quote-unquote struggle of a life. 2 days before the crash, Curly finds Anya sitting in the main room, staring at the nighttime window screen, and asks if she can't sleep either. She talks about the screen, mentioning a dead pixel in the top right-hand corner. Curly tries to look, but is unable to see it. Anya says how it's always in the back of her mind, but Curly responds saying it doesn't ruin the illusion, but maybe because he always sees the bigger picture. Anya then asks a series of strange questions, which Curly doesn't question further. The most important one being why Pony Express would put locks on the medical room, but not in the sleeping quarters. Curly replies safety, again, doesn't question further. At this point in the game, we don't know what Anya is talking about, so we can only theorise what she's referring to. Curly demonstrates how he only sees the bigger picture, as he doesn't think to question further what Anya is really asking. Seeing the bigger picture can be good when judging people as a whole. Curly shows that he's always willing to give people a chance, even if they've done some wrong in life, but this can only leave him ignoring some of the red flags in people that he really should question further. I imagine being a captain for so long makes him more likely to see the good in people, rather than judging them on their mistakes. For example, telling Swansea to be more careful because of the cryopods. 1 day before the crash, Curly is running around frantically looking for the gun hidden by Anya. He finds her in the cockpit and says she shouldn't hurt herself over being laid off. He realises Anya never got a psych evaluation, and she's the only medical member of the crew, and says that she should have come to him if she was feeling stressed. He said he would have done anything to help her as the crew is his responsibility. Anya reveals she's pregnant, and implies that she's already told Curly who it was. Curly panics in this moment, saying that he'll talk to him as he's known him for a long time. This scene flips everything on its head as it's revealed that Anya has been assaulted by Jimmy and is now pregnant with his baby. This changes our perspective on the actions of the characters up to this point. 0 days before the crash. Curly finally talks to Jimmy about what Anya told him. Jimmy implies that it won't be good for himself or Curly when they land. Everything they've achieved together will go out the window. Curly replies that they can get through this, as they've been through difficult situations before. Jimmy throws this back at Curly, that it was his responsibility as to what happened under his watch, and that he'll be hearing this for the rest of his life. When Jimmy suggests crashing the ship, making the situation into a tragedy, where Captain Curly tried his best but failed to save the crew, and was never found again, it would mean Curly's position wouldn't be jeopardised. Jimmy says he'll take care of it, and walks into the cockpit. Curly just stands there. He doesn't stop him. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't say anything. Only later does Curly snap back into reality, where he goes running to the cockpit, going past Jimmy sitting outside with his head in his hands. He yells at him in disbelief and runs into the cockpit, trying to stop the crash, but ends up taking the full hit of it, becoming heavily disfigured on the verge of death. It is revealed that Jimmy crashed the ship. Up until this point, the characters and the player thought it was Curly that had done so. Although he's not entirely innocent, he had a hand in the events that took place, as he let Jimmy walk into the cockpit after telling him about crashing the ship, making it look like a tragedy and turning Curly into a dying hero. He let Jimmy get into his head about his future and reputation, but it's only when it's too late that Curly takes action. It's worth a mention that he must have pondered over what Jimmy said, as it took him way too long to stop him, as he was only at the bottom of the stairs of the cockpit when they were having their conversation. It took Jimmy relatively 5 minutes to take control of the ship, so Curly had plenty of time to stop him. Now Curly is just hanging on by a thread, thanks to Anya, but is blamed for the crash and is unable to do anything to stop Jimmy, who takes control as the new captain. The irony is that when Curly was able to take action, he didn't. But when he was rendered immobile, He's desperate but unable to do anything. Between now and the next point in the story, Anya was feeding Curly his medication, but the sounds of him taking them made her feel nauseous from her being pregnant. 2 months after the crash, Jimmy goes to the medical room and finds Anya next to Curly. She's unable to give him his meds, so she asks Jimmy to do so. He agrees but is rude to her. He gives him his meds, and we hear a very uncomfortable choking and gurgling noise from Curly as he's given his medication. This is the first time we give Curly his meds. It's noted that you can get an achievement for opening and closing Curly's mouth several times. It shows how Jimmy sees Curly now. He can finally be superior to him, at least in his own eyes. He's physically above him and is able to have control of him along with the rest of the crew. 4 months after the crash. After finding extra medicine for Curly, Anya asks Jimmy if he could give it to him again. He yells at her, but still gives Curly his medicine. This time, when the screen fades to black, we hear a different sound coming from Curly. There are several thuds, and with each one, Curly is howling in pain. Out of frustration of the situation he put himself in, Jimmy starts beating Curly. 5 months after the crash, Anya has locked herself in the medical room with Curly inside. Jimmy and Daisuke devise a plan to get the key from an extremely drunk Swansea and get into the medical room through the vent in utility. When they get into utility, they see sparks and wires coming out of the vent. Jimmy manipulates Daisuke into going into the vent, where he immediately hears him yelling in agony. He makes it into the medical room, dragging himself across to reach the lock, but is in a life-threatening condition because of the state of the vent. Daisuke is in terrible condition and is losing blood rapidly. Knowing there's nothing they can do, Swansea decides to put Daisuke out of his misery. After this happens, he temporarily leaves and Jimmy goes to find the gun. We find it hidden under Curly's bed. Jimmy uses the code and unlocks it. When he takes the gun, Curly lets out a wheezy and uncomfortable laugh. When he opens the door, Swansea charges at him with the axe. Curly is laughing at the irony of warning Anya about what would happen if Jimmy took the gun. She warned him from the beginning the potential danger Jimmy could cause and even hid the gun from everyone, refusing to tell anyone where it was. Curly chose his friend over Anya, and not just Anya, the entire crew, which led to their current situation. After this sequence of Jimmy and Swansea trying to kill each other, Swansea ends up losing and is shot by Jimmy. We then go through a bizarre out-of-reality sequence where Jimmy ends with Curly sitting with valves attached to his body, with monitors showing his internals. We go through a disgusting sequence when Jimmy has to realign Curly's insides and then feed him his own leg to keep him alive. The sound design is amazing in this scene because it really emphasises how disgusting and torturous this would be. What's worse is that if you fail, Curly vomits his own leg and Jimmy has to turn the valves and force feed him again, over and over, until you get it right. Even though this scene is out of reality, I think it represents the next scene where Jimmy carries Curly out of the med bay and into the main room where he's propped up with his now all dead crewmates in the respective chairs and Curly laid in the middle. This scene is a direct parallel to Curly's birthday party. Jimmy is still at the head of the table. This time he is in control, but we can see the difference between his and Curly's leadership. Curly now represents his own birthday cake, as after Jimmy grabs the knife and cuts into Curly's leg, as the screen goes static and we hear him screaming in the worst pain you can imagine. Jimmy picks up Curly again and takes him into utility. He opens up the one functioning cryopod and places Curly inside. Our perspective changes as we are now Curly in the cryopod. He gives a whole speech about how he fixed everything, still living in a delusion, while Curly just sits there, unable to do anything other than watch and listen. After Jimmy finishes, he turns on the cryopod and shoots himself in the head off screen. Curly slowly freezes as the credits roll. Curly's story is a fantastic depiction of the failure of action. He's rendered immobile after the crash, forced to watch the horrors take place with no control. The irony that he's the only survivor of the story, from what we know of, was insane to me when I first played the game, especially by the friend who was so far gone and insanely jealous of Curly's success and status that he'd built for a long time. Only for that friend to be stuck in a delusion that they had fixed everything because they managed to save one person. Another irony is that Jimmy more likely put Curly through 20 more years of hell. The only thing he'd be thinking about would be the disturbing events that he had to witness, being unable to do anything about it. It may have even been better to put Curly out of his misery. After the crash, Curly remains in the same spot until the very end. From this position, he sees Anya take her own life, there's Daisuke screaming and dragging himself to unlock the medical room door, and Swansea chase Jimmy with the axe, and then Jimmy later shooting Swansea in the head. The immense guilt Curly must be feeling, knowing that there's nothing he can do. He fails to save the crew from the crash, and he's forced to witness the worst possible fates happen to them, while being unable to do anything. You could call it his own personal hell, as each member of the crew dies. The fandom has a debate on whether Curly is good or bad. I personally think he doesn't belong in either category because he would never fit properly into either. He shows qualities of being a good person. He's kind and fair towards everyone and wants everyone to feel comfortable. But when he's telling somebody off, he's not aggressive and rude like Jimmy is. He's assertive, gets straight to the point without diminishing the feelings of that person. His big flaw, though, is putting his friend before the safety of the crew. He's told outright what his friend did, but is still hesitant, meaning that Jimmy could control and, in the end, doom everyone. Admittedly, I couldn't comprehend how anyone could see Curly as the good guy, and I thought people liked him because of the way he looked. But I can see that Curly has good qualities. He is a morally grey character, but that makes him the most realistic in the game. And in real life, people don't always make the best decisions all the time. We want to see that the people we call friends and want to spend time with are good people just because they're our friend, and you wouldn't pick a bad person to be your friend, would you? It's harder than people think to call out friends, and on the scale of what Jimmy did, I can imagine it'd be really hard, but it needs to be done. It also teaches us to be critical of more than strangers or celebrities' actions. Look at the people around you whose actions you don't agree on and think, are you okay with that person doing what they're doing? Thank you for watching my longest video so far. This is probably one of my favorites to do. Curly has caused a big debate in the fandom of is he good, is he bad, and like because of the terrible choices that leads to the consequences that it does. And, we can all critique him saying he could have done more and he should have done more, but I imagine more people were closer to what he would have done rather than, thinking that they're the more moral high ground. Because more times than ever, people don't. They let their friend get away with it because they think it's one time, and then their friend ends up doing what Jimmy did or something. Maybe not that far. That's the extreme, but their friend, ends up doing worse and worse things. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Thank you all for watching. Yeah, and please like and subscribe. I'm really proud of how it's going so far. I know people probably look and be like, you haven't even got that many views, blah blah blah. But for someone like me, I'm really happy with how I've got, and I just want to say that I've had some really nice messages from people, and I'm extremely grateful for all of you. I would really want if I was able to build a community of just like a safe space for people to, as long as you're not, harming anyone, to express yourselves, be comfortable, and because that's something I've always wanted. So if people like that, that's great for me. My next video will of course be the last character, good old Jimbo. I'm sure everyone's looking forward to that one. And by the way, sorry if these videos have been a bit repetitive because it's, all the characters go through very similar points in the story. So, like Swansea and Daisuke's videos are a bit repetitive, and Jimmy, Anya, and Curly's videos are very repetitive because their stories are intertwined with each other. I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and I will see you in the near but probably far future.